Good morning, everyone. Hi, everybody. This is a wonderful conversation to discuss the opportunities, challenges, and resources for gender equality. And today I have the pleasure to be with three wonderful women who are challenging and fighting for gender equality from different point of views. It's been said that gender equality will not be reached in the world until 2120. From its definition, gender equality means the parity between men and women in education, health, politics, economics. And so this is the right place to discuss it from different point of views, from a retail point of view, from business and institutional point of view, and from the charity. Let me start with Chantal Query. She is the Chief Culture Officer for Value Retail, and she's, let's say, the ambassador of gender equality for Value Retail. Our Bicester Village Shopping Collection is under one mission, the Do Good program. Chantal, would you like to explain us and our colleagues what is this mission? What does it mean to us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bianca. And I'm delighted to be with Chiara and Stephanie today. So let me just give you an idea of who we are, the Bicester Village Shopping Collection. So we create flagship, extraordinary shopping destinations built on curated guest experiences with compelling prices, but we're also a platform for good. Our mission as the Bicester Village Shopping Collection is to make the lives of others better, be it our brands, our guests, our people, and our communities. And our Do Good program is very much one of the way that we achieve this mission. It's an awareness driving and a fundraising program that is designed, as you said, Bianca, to unite all our villages around really three key focus areas that directly impact the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Number one, the empowerment of women and children. So we support 10 incredible charities that are really promoting and progressing the self-empowerment of women and children, both locally and globally. Number two, mentoring talent. We really work with organizations that are focusing on growing talent from the retail, the fashion industry, hospitality industry as well. And number three, really, what are we doing to support our local communities directly? So the 10 charities that we've chosen, actually, the team have chosen these charities. We defined one common mission, the empowerment of women and children, and then the villages selected their own charities. And, you know, we believe in a world where every woman, every child, wherever they are born, can have a future where health, education, and economic opportunities are a right, not only a privilege. So through our charity partners, we can respond in an agile way, nimbly and effectively to the many challenges that unfortunately women are facing. Still today, and more so today, I would say, because COVID in a certain way have, put us backwards. Some people are saying 2 decades backwards in our progress. And these challenges are, health crisis, water shortage, child marriage, women who are living in war zones, inequality of access to education and business opportunities. So we believe that using our platform for good and giving a voice, a presence to our charity partner, we can really advance the empowerment of women. So one of our charities that we've been working with for now really 18 months is Women for Women. And Women for Women really work in the worst areas in the world, and their mission is just unbelievable. But Bianca, I'm not going to be talking about about them. I'd rather really Stephanie to talk about Women for Women.
Yeah, we leave the stage to Stephanie Siddal. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome and thank you for being here with us today. Stephanie, she's the head of global policy and advocacy for Women International. So she's the proper person to explain us what is the impact and the mission and also the challenges for Women International. Over to you, Stephanie. But one thing, if you don't mind, I would like to share an inspiring video about Women International, just to have a frame of your charity.
Umugabo wanjye niwe babanje kwica baramutema, ubwo rero bamaze kumutema nanjye urahitamo kuko kurongora unango urahitamo ngo tukubage.
Wow, she inspires me. Stephanie, as I was saying and asking you before, let's discuss together what Women International does and what's the mission of this powerful charity.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bianca, and thank you, Chantal and Chiara. I'm so pleased to be starting the week by talking to you. So as you saw a little bit from the video, Women for Women International works in countries affected by conflict, and our vision as an organization is to create a world and contribute to creating a world where all women can determine the course of their lives, participate fully in the decisions that impact their lives and reach their full potential. So one of the ways we do that is through our Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program. And through that program, women learn the skills that they need to rebuild their lives, their families, and their communities. And what that looks like is women join a program with 25 other women, and they connect with each other and form support networks. They learn to earn an income and to save money. They gain knowledge and resources to care for their families, so learning around health and well-being, and they learn about their rights and how to defend them. And as I said, women come together to do that. So they use that knowledge and those skills that they've learned to kind of use that power to then create this ripple effect. And we have really incredible impact data that shows how powerful that can be. So for example, on average, women triple their earnings over the course of the program, and they become much more involved in household decision making. And that helps them to then achieve long-term security and then, as I said, participate in those decisions that impact their lives. And I think most importantly, because we're working in some of the most challenging contexts around the world, what we know is that when you invest in the power of one woman, that then creates this ripple effect of change. And it makes our world more equal, more peaceful, and more prosperous.
Thank you, Stephanie. I remember some years ago a very inspiring speech from actress Emma Watson about gender equality, and she highlighted the importance of men involvement and engagement in the gender equality, in the fight for gender equality. So what I would like to ask you is how can we engage more and further men in this fight, in this, in all the challenges to guarantee the gender equality? Because this is not only a women issue.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think one that is really front of mind for us at Women for Women International. So probably around 8 years or so ago now, actually starting in Nigeria, we had been doing this program I talked about, our Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program, and women were coming back to us and saying, it's all very well me learning about my rights and having these skills and this knowledge, but if the men, the most powerful people in my community, don't understand, don't know about this, aren't learning the same things as me, then I can only get so far with that information. And I was actually reviewing some of our impact data last week, and what it shows is that even in situations where women improve their self-confidence, their agency, their self-belief, that doesn't always translate into them speaking out actively against violence in their communities. And that can be because the most powerful decision makers in communities are men. So absolutely, Bianca, I think we have to bring men on this journey with us. It's not just a women's issue. And one of the ways that we do that is through our men's engagement program. So based on that feedback in Nigeria, we've now rolled out a program in all of the countries that we work in. And we focus mainly on leaders in communities. So that could be religious leaders, military leaders, civil society leaders. And we train them in women's rights and how to be an ally for women's rights so that they can then use their power to protect and promote women's rights and gender equality. And we found that to be such a powerful way to create that kind of wider buy-in, I guess, and an understanding that change can't happen in a vacuum. One of the other ways that we do this is, I talked a little bit about women understanding their rights and defending their rights. And one of the ways that as an organization, we try to really facilitate that is through our Change Agent program. So our Change Agent program is an grassroots advocacy and leadership program where we train women in advocacy and leadership skills so that they can push for the changes that they want to see. And often that's about teaching them to understand the kind of power dynamics in their communities, who the important stakeholders are. So really these two programs go hand in hand, this kind of engaging men and then also training women to be strong advocates for gender equality. Chiara.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks a lot.
I just wanted to enhance what Stephanie said. I had the privilege to work with Professor Yunus and with Dr. Mukawe, not only for when women are really weapons of war, as we saw in this wonderful movie, but also to give them the power with microcredits and so on and so on. And I'm really convinced that if we want to do it alone, only women, Amazons have been extinguished. It's really convinced men explained that we're not against them, but that we need them, not for women, but because the society in a war need us. Then I just wanted to add that because I think that there are incredible number of men who are committed at our side and they really make the difference. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Chiara. Let me share with my colleagues that you are committed to promote the alliance between private and public sector to guarantee gender equality. And today we have the pleasure to have you and welcome you at Fidenza Village. So thank you, Chiara, for being here. Chiara Corazza. She's the private sector representative for France within G20 Empower Alliance.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so delighted. Thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Chantal. And thank you, Stephanie. I'm so delighted to be with you because when we are talking about human rights, we are talking about women's rights, as Hillary Clinton reminded 25 years ago. And when we talk about violence, we talk about a woman in fragile situation. We have to think also at the empowerment in terms of education and financial independence, because everything is linked. If you are not in a fragile situation, you can defend yourself because women are not fragile, but it's the system that makes. I just want to remind two things why it's so important to work with the G7 and G20, because the G20 countries represent 85% of the richness of the world and represent 75% of the trade, then if we want to achieve a parity for women, it's in this frame that we have to work to change the system, to change the mentalities, to change the way of taking the decisions. And it's what we do. We are in a very, very challenging time. We are in a disrupted world. 85% of the jobs, Chantal, Stephanie, Bianca, we don't know what it will be in the next 3-4 years. And those jobs are jobs completely different of what we were used to see. We are completely changing the way of consuming, of buying, of thinking, of financing things, and of course, of working. This means that we cannot imagine that this new world that will be not only after the corona, but also because the new technology changed everything, cannot be done without women. Then the concept is not to say, we women, we have to be protected. No, we women in this situation have to bring, of course we have to be protected, have to be the stakeholders, the decision makers, those who make the difference, and bring a value added and a contribution to society. I will give you some examples. Nowadays, in the G20 countries, women represent 52% of the workforce, but contribute only to 34% to GDP. This is a loss, an economic loss. We know that if we had equality in economy sector, we would add 28 trillion a year at the global economy and create 240 jobs. If we don't do it, it's a waste for the society. And what we do, for instance, in a very concrete way, is try to work hand in hand with NGOs, of course, governments, institutions, and private sectors. And I really salute what global retail is doing, because the private sectors has a responsibility to be involved and make the change. If each works alone, we will never do it. We have nowadays 3 main problems. One is that the algorithm can be the solution to have women everywhere, but can be the worst of the things to make a dangerous world. Algorithm decide everything for us. What happens? You have 22% of women coding and designing the algorithm. As a result, do you think it's fair that when a woman asks to a bank to have a credit, she gets 20% less than a man, even if her account is larger, because the algorithm decided? Do you think it's fair that we have 99% of chance to recognize a man with a facial recognition and only 35% of a dark-faced woman? Because those who code, very well-intentioned engineers, reproduce what they know. Do you think it's not normal that our child, when they go to the university, a boy has more chance to be selected because the algorithm have seen the bias, the CV bias in the way they've been coded? We are creating a dangerous world. Then, do you think it's normal that we have only 11% of women in cybersecurity? That means that we give the possibilities to utilize some ways that are not thinking, because only a part of the society has given the input. And in all this, we add the fact that this crisis, the last barometer that we launched in G20 countries, we have half of the population of the world, men and women, who are convinced that we never get gender equality. And as you said, Chantal, the statistics say that we went back 35 years. But I'm very optimistic, because we know all this. We know the solutions. And one of the solutions is very simple. You, Stephanie, you are active in education. Education. If you give STEM education to girls, starting from 5 years old, you give them the tools, because if they learn mathematics, if they learn technology, if they learn engineering, there will be those who will be able to code, to make the algorithm, to build the bridge. When you build a bridge, you don't look if it's a man or a woman. You want the best one. Talent has no gender, but we have to give to each gender the same opportunities, skills, and assets. That's why I think that STEM education for girls is, in this context, the most important things, because our daughters, they want to consume in a responsible way. They want to buy things that are not been produced in a bad way. They want to fight against the climate change in a fair way. But if they don't have any competence in energy, there are only 6% of women in energy, 6%, and 6% of minister of, let's say, energetic transition or environment. If the women are not there, men will take the decision. Then we have to convince the girls, please learn this, because like that, you can denounce as Greta does, but you can act, you can do, you will take the right decision. You will be at the negotiating table and decide at the COP26 what we will do. By the way, there is a good news. In the COP27 in Egypt, there will be 3 women at the head of the COP. Then you see things to do. The second thing I wanted to say, the second problem, access to capital. Good if you have education, but if your startup in the world have access only to 2% of venture capital, if it's led by a woman, you can have the greatest idea in the world. You can be the best innovator, but you need money. And you have 242 million women who own or lead the business in the world. You know what? Those women have access as less than 1% of the public and private tender. And you know better than me how diversity in the supply chain, it's important for the quality of the product, for the price of the product, because diversity brings riches. Then what to do? And this, we have to imagine what. I would give you an example, because in Italy, there is a minister that during the Italian presidency of the G20 launched something completely innovative worldwide. She decided that for the public procurement, they will give extra points to the companies who will respect gender equality, numbers in the boards, parity of salary, etc. That means that gives invite to the companies to be the most woman-friendly, because that means business at the end. And I think that in the field of luxury, in the field of products, that it's very important, because that give the lead. It's always the biggest company who then give the lead to the others that will follow. The third big example, and I don't want to monopolize the word, the third big issue that, and everything is linked, it's the injustice in terms of work balance. You have 53% of women in the G7 country, 53% of women in the G7 countries, that means Germany, Japan, Canada, United States, Italy, France, I mean, the richest of the richest. 53% of women say it's impossible to be a good mother and do a career. And we are in 2021. Then the third big issue is to create the condition that you can work if you want, you can stay home if you want, you can be independent if you want or not, but this work-life balance. And we come back at what you said before, Chantal, fathers, parents. And I think that a very important shift of mindset is the parental leave. And there again, you have 2 countries in the world who are really champions. France has 27 days mandatory, fully paid by the government. And Italy has now launched for next year 3 months fully paid. And I can tell you that it makes a difference, because myself, I have a son who has 2 little daughters. He takes care of them, and he starts to understand how it works at a household, and not just taking care of the children. It's understand, because now the situation is that women have 5 times more non-paid jobs in the world. It's inadmissible. We cannot continue like that. And all this, again, we need the business leading by example, opening and saying, I will give maternity paid for I don't know how weeks, the other will follow. And I say mandatory, you cannot stay there, you go home to take care of. And then laws that are permitted. The last thing that I will say that it's completely linked, the 3 priorities I told you for me are those, but what is a leitmotif is governance. because nowadays we have 6% of CEOs who are women, 6% in the world, in the big companies. That means that the very well-intentioned, again, CEOs that are there don't have the mindset to create the pipeline that gives them the opportunity to do. Then again, we need mandatory laws. Nobody of us likes to be a quota woman, but at the end of the day, it works. We saw it in all countries who have quotas. We have more than 25%. In all countries that have no quotas, you have no less than 25% of women in boards. France has 46% of women in boards. And now we just finished to vote, and has been something that I will share with you, because I hope that UK, Germany, India will do the same. We have a mandatory law that has been just voted 1 month ago, who obliged the companies to have 30% of women in the executive committees from now in 5 years, and from now to 2030, 40%. I can tell you that now that's mandatory. You will find the women, you will prepare them, you will hire a boy and a girl as a youngster, because they need it at the end of the day. And this is coupled with another very important thing, that the Public Bank of Investment is obliged to favor companies who respect this. And as you know, as you say in French, le nerf de la guerre is money. Then if you finance in a right way, if the sovereign funds of Norway decides that it just puts the money where they respect the parity, I can tell you it works. And what we did in Milan 2 months ago, it was quite revolutionary, because with the complicity of McKinsey, we asked 30 CEOs, very big companies, industrial companies in energy, in bank, insurance, worldwide, to sign a pledge, very strong one, saying towards the zero gender gap. I don't say tomorrow, but the objective is there and the target. And this, I think that combined can make the difference, and there will be less women that are treated as you saw in the movie and as we see each day, because there will be a fair society. And again, not only for women, but for the whole humanity. And I'm sure that contributions like yours are really precious. Or not only because you're supporting financially, but because you're open-minded, your clients, they, by the way, they're very sensitive to that. 76% of the people says that they buy with the mind, with the heart, and the image of the company, it's completely linked with the gender-sensitive response.
Thank you, Chiara. Thanks a lot. It's very perceivable, the passion and commitment that you have in your initiatives, in your job, and in your life toward the gender equality. I would now leave the stage for wrap up to Chantal, who, as I said to you before, is our Chief Culture Officer, because I know that this is not a one-shot conversation. This is just a first step in anticipation of International Women's Day. So Chantal, over to you with a promise to share with these wonderful 2 women and our colleagues.
Well, I mean, Chiara and Stephanie, you said it beautifully. I think that the messages I really got from both of you, I'd like to just spend some time recapping on some of them. I mean, Stephanie, investing in women has a ripple effect, definitely. And we see it all over again. Having women in decision-making position, I mean, Chiara, that is really one of the most important challenges that we are facing. But again, the solutions, we know them. Education, education, education. Number 2, access to capital for women. And number 3, what are the injustices surrounding work-life balance, and what are we doing about them to give to women the context to really feel fulfilled. And I completely agree with you. Today, I think with the transparency that government are asking from companies, having to publish your gender, pay gap, having to really show authentically what you are doing to promote women, not only in normal position, but really in senior position. I think all this is really creating the journey for us to accelerate the positioning of women and to provide that gender equality. So sadly, COVID is not helping the situation, but I believe in when you create a discussion around it, when you involve men, when you involve other communities, that's really what helps set the right framework to achieve this. So for us, as creating a platform to educate the 50 million guests that come to our villages is something very important. If you visit Fidenza village at the moment, you will notice that spread in the landscape, we have some messages that gives our guests an education on what the vision and the mission of Women for Women is. If you visit our website, you will learn more about their activities. And if you wish to be involved, you can really help by, donating whatever amount that you want, because as we said, capital is important to help accelerate this mission. Now, 2022, I'm very much looking forward towards it. As the Bicester Village Shopping Collection, our key theme for 2022 is unlocking futures, unlocking her future, unlocking their futures. And we will be reaching out to our guests, to all of you actually, to really look at ways, tangible ways that really create impact to unlock her future, unlock their futures. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to support you, Stephanie, and the mission of Women for Women. And Chiara, very much looking forward to seeing how we can join forces with your involvement with Empowerment of Women G20 to see how we can create a movement and help improve this. And Bianca, thank you. Thank you for facilitating this discussion.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, all of these amazing women. So this is the first step of a new movement, let's say. Thank you, everyone.
And if I may, Bianca, interestingly enough, on Friday is Human Rights Day. So I'm delighted that we're having this discussion today, really at an important week where the world will be talking about all of these subjects. And so perfect timing.
At the perfect time, yeah, to educate people at the perfect time. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you a lovely day to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.